This is something very important about this paper. Now let us talk formally about deconstruction. And as I explained the other day, not the other day, but rather in one of the lectures, that deconstruction is a very important strand, thread, component in post-structuralism. That means post-structuralism consists of number of strands, number of threads, number of positions, number of perspectives, and deconstruction is one important perspective in post-structuralism. So, whereas you have structuralist theory, you have structuralism, and even structuralism we can discuss in plural terms, structuralism. And structuralism has different aspects, linguistic aspect, and then its application to literature, and especially its application to narratives. And also, you see structuralism as applied to not only literary text, but to all kinds of text, visual text. There we talk about structuralism, but post-structuralism takes a slightly different position. Now the question that is to be discussed is, what is post-structuralism? How do we define post-structuralism? And what does the word post, what does this stem post in the word post-structuralism suggest? Is it simply something which comes after structuralism? Is it something which simply refers to a certain period, or it is more than that? So we begin our discussion of this term post-structuralism. I wonder if any one of you in the classroom would say something about post-structuralism, because we have been discussing this term. So I would like to hear from somebody in the classroom. How would you define post-structuralism? Anybody? So when you think about post-structuralism, you can say that post-structuralism is a fuller working out of the implications of structuralism. In other words, post-structuralists are also structuralists, but they have become wiser. That means post-structuralists are able to see all those implications in the linguistic theory that structuralists advance. That means if structuralism talked about a certain view of language, then post-structuralism tries to show that structuralists were not able to see far enough the implications of their own theory. And so we are wiser, we can show that these are the implications of structuralist theory. So in that respect, you can say that post-structuralists advance, carry forward the implications of structuralist theory. Now here we can look at this problem differently also. That post-structuralists are actually structuralists. They have become wiser, and they are able to see the folly of their earlier ways. That means something which escaped their attention earlier, now they are able to see those things. So that is one way of talking about post-structuralism. Then there is something very important about this, that okay, language, there is a certain view of language in post-structuralism, and that view of language, in fact, carries to its extreme the theories advanced by structuralists. There is also something about that overall temper of structuralism and post-structuralism, overall intention of structuralism and post-structuralism. And here we can put it this way, that structuralism tried to find a grammar of literature. Structuralism tried to explain everything about language. Structuralism tried to explain everything about literature. Structuralism was interested in codes. Structuralism was interested in rules. Structuralism was interested in understanding the system. It was interested in presenting a key which could open that system fully, clearly. That means it had this kind of heroic ambition. Heroic ambition means that this ambition was very grand. Okay, we will explain literature. Just as there are rules of language, so there are rules of literature. Just as there are rules in grammar, and grammar explains all aspects of language, so there are rules which can explain all aspects of literature, how literature is made, how literature is constructed, how literature comes into being. And we will offer those rules. We will offer those keys. So that is what is called the structuralist ambition to discover those rules. This ambition was grand. This ambition was very, very lofty. But what happens in post-structuralism? Post-structuralism does not have this kind of lofty ambition. It is not heroic in intention. Rather, it is comic in the sense that it does not have that kind of ambition. Rather, it tries to puncture the confidence of the structuralists. It tries to deflate the heroic intentions of structuralists. It tries to just show a certain side of structuralism which structuralists were not able to see. So, two things here emerge very quickly. One, that post-structuralists are structuralists, but they have become wiser. They see the implications of their own theory fully. And second, post-structuralists or post-structuralism is a fuller working out of the implications of structuralism. And in terms of intentions, you can say post-structuralism is actually comic. It deflates, punctures the confidence, the lofty ambitions of structuralists. So whereas one thing was heroic, lofty, the other thing is comic in intentions. Comic does not mean here something which is to be laughed at. Comic here refers to that kind of genre where something is not heroic, right? Where something does not take itself seriously. So that is how we define structuralism and post-structuralism, and especially how we define post-structuralism with reference to structuralism. Now let us identify what are some of those important strands in post-structuralism. What are some important movements in structuralism? And again, we'll say that a certain period in literary history, the period from 1965 to 1980, was a very, very important period in theory. You had number of important theorists coming up with their theories, coming up with important books. In fact, there has not been anything to match this kind of productivity, rich productivity. if something can match this kind of productivity, it was in the early years of 20th century. Say, for example, the period of 20s. You know that 20s was the high watermark of modernism, important works. So that was also a period when, say, you had that kind of rich productivity in the world of literature. And now you have this kind of rich productivity in the world of theory, especially in the period beginning from 1965 to 1980. Now, which are those important theories, which are those important names in post-structuralist theory, which are important for us to study? And you see that these names appear in this paper. So if I talk about one particular strand, that is deconstruction. And one very important name in deconstructive theory is that of Jacques Derrida. Jacques Derrida published, or before that he presented a very, say, powerful, very impactful paper at one conference in 1966 at Johns Hopkins University. And the paper was titled and Science, Structure and Science in the Discourse of Human Sciences. Try to read Derrida's few paragraphs at least. Now, this was a very important paper. And Derrida talked about his theories in that paper. And later he expanded that paper. And he, in fact, brought out a series of books. And roughly many of those ideas recur in his writings. So Jacques Derrida becomes one very important presence in post-structuralist theory, and especially his name is identified with deconstruction. Deconstruction. Because he gave this term deconstruction. And deconstruction was a particular way of reading text, a particular way of approaching language. Derrida soon gained a kind of superstar status. And he won over lots of theorists, especially in the United States of America. And so many important theorists, many important people in the United States of America who were following a different approach to text earlier, they were won over by Jacques Derrida. And so deconstruction became a very, very popular method in American academy, right? From 1970s onwards, deconstruction. In America, not in Britain. Not in Britain, it is important. One very, say, you can say, powerful presence in deconstructive theory was that of De Man, Paul De Man. And it is interesting to know that Paul De Man was a literary theorist, a literary critic to begin with. And Jacques Derrida was not a literary critic as such. Jacques Derrida was a philosopher. Jacques Derrida was a philosopher. That means Jacques Derrida was basically talking about philosophy, not literature. He occasionally talked about literature. But Paul De Man was essentially a literary critic. And he also came to certain of his theories independently, and and sometime later he can be found talking about many of those ideas which Jacques Derrida talked about. I must mention other important theories also here. In American Academy, J. Hillis Miller, again a very important name in American criticism, and J. Hillis Miller earlier followed what is called Geneva School of Criticism, but he was also won over by Jacques Derrida. And there were others also, lesser known figures, Barbara Johnson, for example, and others. What is important here is that Jacques Derrida also spent time in the United States. He was born in Algeria. He was brought up in France. His first language was France, and he was translated. in English, especially his early work of grammatology, which is considered a very important work that was translated by one very important Indian critic, that is, he was translated by Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak. Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak herself would emerge an important critic, an important voice in post-colonial theory, in deconstruction, in feminist theory, and of course in comparative literature in many places. And one of my friends used to say that Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak always has a stick in her hands. If there is a traditional literary critic, she has the stick of deconstruction to beat him. If there is a male literary critic, she has the stick of feminism to beat him. If there is a European literary critic, she has the stick of a post-colonial critic to beat him. So she always has that stick. Anyway, this is something which I am saying in half seriousness, but important thing here is that Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak can be found in so many different places in theory. And so is the case with Derrida also. But it also gives us an interesting perspective about theory. And that interesting perspective is that we cannot have watertight departments in theory. We cannot say that, okay, this is deconstruction, this is the house of deconstruction, this is separate, this is untouched by other presences. No, actually, there is a lot of overlap. There is influence of one theory on another. There is often a point and counterpoint, and that's why it is important to see many of these theories together. And this is especially the case when we study feminism, right? So coming back to our discussion of Jacques Derrida, he had a very important presence in American Academy, and he won over many acolytes in United States of America. So that is one aspect of deconstruction. That means when we are discussing deconstruction, we are discussing two important aspects of deconstruction. Or rather, we are discussing three important aspects of deconstruction. We try to understand the philosophical position of deconstruction. We try to understand the political position of deconstruction. And we try to understand the linguistic aspect of deconstruction. And all these three are important related. So one can think about linguistic aspect of deconstruction, where Jacques Derrida and others, they try to find fault with Ferdinand Saussure's theory. That is the linguistic aspect. Then there is also the philosophical aspect, say notions about identity, notions about man, and what does Derrida say about philosophical dimension of deconstruction. So that is another aspect. And then there is also a charge against deconstruction. The charge is that it is escapist. It does not try to touch important issues. That it is very narcissistic and so on. That it is concerned too much with language, not language as discourse, but rather language as structure of science. Language not of reference, but language which simply is talking about deference. These are important concepts. So here, another aspect of deconstruction comes up, and that aspect is its political dimension. Can deconstruction be applied to politics of the day? Can it help us see our world differently? Can it see the politics of the world differently? So this is also an important question, which is also taken up by Jacques Derrida in one of his later works, something which we will be discussing. That means when we try to see deconstruction, we try to see its philosophical aspect, we try to see its linguistic aspect, and linguistic aspect is basis, and we also try to see its political implications. So that is something about deconstructive theory. Here, in order to understand these concepts clearly, it is important for us to see that there are lots of words, lots of terms, a certain kind of terminology which has been given by deconstructive theory. Many of these terms now have become established terms in literary theory, but these terms were first given by deconstruction. Now, since you are studying this paper, I must also sound a note of caution that many times you come across a new word, or rather, you come across a familiar word, but somehow you're not able to understand that familiar word fully when you see that word in a sentence. That means there is there may be a word which is very very familiar, but it does not appear so familiar when you see it in your theory books. That means that if there are some new terms in theory, some terminology in theory, a certain kind of specialized vocabulary in theory, a certain kind of jargon in theory, then there are also familiar words which are given a different meaning in theory. And that's why your day to day meaning of that word is not the meaning in that context. And you can think about some words. We all use the word trees, trees. We all use the word presence. Now, both these words, trace and presence, are common words. We are using these words all the time, right? Okay, now think about another word, phonocentrism. This is not a common word. This is not a common word. So if you see a word like phonocentrism, you'll understand that, okay, this is something very specific. This is a specialized, say, use of word. And so possibly you are on the alert. But you are not on the alert when you come across a word like presence or a word like trace. And this means that you have to be on the alert whenever you come across a familiar word, but you feel that that familiar word has been given a different meaning, a different connotation. And that is the beauty of studying theory. You come across new words, but you also come across familiar words given a new meaning, right? So the best way to discuss deconstruction would be to first think about some important concepts in deconstructive theory and then try to have that discussion around those concepts, because deconstruction will become very very easy if we try to understand many of those concepts. And while discussing those concepts, we can also refresh our knowledge of structuralism, what structuralism says and what deconstruction says, what structuralism says and how deconstruction differs from its stance, especially its stance on language. And then, of course, other aspects of deconstruction. So, this is by way of preparing you to study deconstruction. Now, somebody very quickly can throw all those terms, can list all those terms which we come across in deconstructive theory. And I'm sure many of you attended my lectures in the last semester. So, at least you must have that list of those concepts in your mind. So should I hear something from you? So maybe
Yes,
now
sir.
the next 10 or 15 minutes I should hear something from you. Yes, who?
Yes, sir.
Yes, go on.
Sir, you discussed the terms like center, then determinate, indeterminate, the concept of misreading, and pluralist, then signifier and signified, which is already there in structuralism also,
Mm-hmm.
and metaphysical, the concept of metaphysics of presence,
Mm-hmm.
transcendental, transcendental signified,
Mm-hmm.
and, and terms like logocentrism,
Good.
phonocentrism, and I think some others also there,
Yes, yes.
correct misreading, incorrect misreading. On
So I'm
technology
muting.
also,
I'm muting myself. I must be hearing something from all of you. Yes. Yes. What? Somebody else?
so
Yes, Abdul Bashar.
I would like to one more thing which you taught in those days, that structuralism takes its lesson from linguistics and believes in neatness and objectivity, and whereas the post-structuralism takes its lessons from philosophy. That's the difference between them.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for say sending this timely reminder. Yes, wonderful. Yeah, that is true.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. So you know that linguistics is a very exact kind of science, or it tries to be very, very exacting, scientific, and philosophy does not try to be so exacting. So yes, that is a very important difference. That uh, structuralism taking lessons from linguistics, and post-structuralism, especially deconstruction, taking its lessons from philosophy. Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Abhishek. Yes, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Anam, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Would you like to add something?
So there is also a concept of trace in deconstruction.
Concept of
And,
trace. Yes, yes, yes. Nikhat, should
and
I?
so there,
Yeah, please, Anam. Yeah.
and so there is also there is also a talk about binary oppositions or dichotomy in deconstruction.
Good, good, very good, good. Somebody would like to add something? Nikhat, are you there? Nikhat?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So in deconstruction, there's a concept of the deep focus and shallow focus, and there's also logocentrism, where the binary of focus. For example, and Derrida says that writing is potent to speaking, whereas Plato and Saussure said that speaking is potent to writing. He focused on binaries, and he yes, and so there's this concept of trees, and then Derrida said that there's no center in he gave the example of a sandbox, and he said that bird does not have any center. Um, he blew off structuralism of Saussure, where he said that everything has a structure. He said that writing language has no structure.
Right, right, right. Any other view? Hamad, are you there? Hamad, would you like to add something? Isha, Isha, Isha. Yes, Isha. Isha, yes. Suhail, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah. You made an excellent presentation in the last semester, right? So would you like to
Thank you,
recall
sir.
something from that presentation?
Yes, sir. There are few other concepts in yes, sir. There are few other concepts in deconstruction, like
Mhm,
the diachronic use of language, the synchronic use of language, and there is the important concept of long and parole.
mhm.
There is also signified and signifier. We have functional use of language. Then we have the concept of the idea of wholeness, the transformation. Then we have the idea of the idea of self-regulation also, which was given by Vico and Piaget. Then also we have the uh, idea of foregrounding. We have the idea of We have the idea of paradigmatic use of language and syntagmatic use of language. We have the phatic function of language. We have emotive use of language. We will also come to know about Prague structuralism. We also have we will also come to know the term relationship in structuralism. Then, and relationship is an important concept in structuralism. We will also come to know the ideas given by Jean Piaget. We will also come to know the concept of metaphor, the concept of metonymy.
Right.
Sir.
So
And we will also come to know the ideas of dissension.
Okay, so we must chalk out something for tomorrow's class. I'll be discussing, sure, but maybe 3-4 of you can take up this challenge of discussing a concept each tomorrow, maybe at some length, right? And then after you have discussed many of these concepts, I'll also try to give a kind of overview, but not tomorrow. But let me just hear from you. So tomorrow's say there can be say 4 presenters tomorrow, or at least 3 presenters tomorrow. I need different volunteers. So who would volunteer to make a presentation tomorrow? Taking up one concept each. Volunteer yourself. Yes. Qayyum? So I must identify the speakers. Suhail is one speaker. Qayyum is another speaker. Qayyum, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
Suhail and Qayyum, they are 2 speakers, and we can also think about Anam. Anam, can you be one
Yes,
speaker,
sir.
Anam?
Yes,
Right?
sir.
Okay.
Yes,
And Seher Salim? Seher?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can also be a speaker, right? So 4 of you can
Okay, sir.
pick up one concept each, and you can discuss among yourselves. And even if there is a little bit of repetition, no problem. Because as I said, repetition is not a bad thing in theory, because we always learn and we always have our concepts consolidated through repetition, right? And of course, there are others who can also take up some other concept later, which are left over. So tomorrow we are meeting in the 3rd period again. If somebody has to say something, then one is here. Otherwise, we are going to end this meeting, right? Because just 2 minutes are left. Okay, so goodbye. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.